Yeah, I can't believe it's been, what, 18 years?
My first trip to India was soon after that. It was 2006, beginning of, I think.
This is true.
What are we talking about in our next 10-year reunion?
Hopefully, how we had a very successful IPO. I don't know.
I need a partner. I need a team, a partner, and like, building our own team. Hello, Gautam. I think in honor of the
Hey,
Founders Day, we get to dive into the background of where we came from, how we got here, and
the
all the fun stories along the way.
yeah, I can't believe it's been, what, 18 years? What's the
Yeah,
official
yeah.
number?
Start to feel old doing the
Yeah,
math on
yeah.
these things, but that's right.
This is true.
Well, I know we have some pretty different like perspectives on the founding story because of how we both met with what we were both doing at the time. So, I could, like, from mine, I remember I was trying to do stuff on my own, right? And I was working with teams, vendors through. I think it was around open source. Was, being an open source background kind of guy. That was the where I was kind of coming at it from and thinking, great, we'll just get these global teams and we'll do a bunch of great work. And then realized real quickly that without continuity and people management and, like, processes and all the things you need to do good work, it was getting out of hand and kind of not really going well. So I remember writing a little manifesto, like, trying to put my own thoughts down. What do we really need? And it's like, we need a partner. I need a team, a partner, and like, building our own team, not working with all these other, people that don't have a stake in the game and freelancers that don't care about the work they do, and they end up, being competitors eventually anyway. So I remember writing that little thing and circulating it through any global connections I had, including, like, my buddy Pablo in Brazil, and obviously through Andrew. And that's where he's like, hey, I've got somebody, it's an entrepreneur, Indian, starting their own consulting company out of India. Kind of, I think you guys are really get along. I remember that being the intro of it, and I said, sounds great. I think we first got introduced there. And I remember we got to, like, oh, let's get together in New York. It seems like a place in the middle. And we get together in New
Yeah,
York.
we hadn't started working then, had we? We had actually. We before we met in New York, I think we had started with Anoop.
That's right. It was like,
Remember?
okay, let's find
Yeah,
a Java developer or two that can take on some projects, and let's start there and see how it
yeah,
goes. And
yeah.
then,
I remember
yeah,
that.
we got to go to New York. That was the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was sort of obviously different view, different lens on it. I was starting out on my own, and
Uh,
funnily enough, it was in London that I met Andrew, and so, which is where I find myself now. And met him, and he introduced me to him. My old college friend wanted to start something on his own, and I had started a consulting business with four of my friends. Though it was a funny story because it was a conglomerate before it was anything else, and I was running the tech side of the conglomerate, and then we, like you said, we met and we started working with a couple of people. I think very quickly we both realized that there was a lot of synergy in what we're trying to do. Um, and yeah, I'd worked on the whole. Had been exposed to the whole open source concept of building business applications quite thoroughly with my time in the UN, and that was quite fresh, so it really resonated with me. And so that became sort of a good baseline of how we would think about SourceFuse. Obviously, New York, I think, solidified a lot of that. Um, it was important, I think, for both of us to um, physically meet, catch up, see that we connected. I think there was also a good sort of meeting of values. I think that was very important, right? And then I think that got going. That's how it got going.
yeah. I think the face to face is critical. It continues to be now. We kind of make that effort to get together, just in teams together and everything. I think it's in this virtual world, it's important to keep that FaceTime. I remember my first trip to India was soon after that. It was 2006, beginning of, I think, when we kicked
Six,
everything
yeah.
out. And you were giving me all the warnings about my first journey to India. Like, are you ready for are you ready for this? And it was kind of funny. I mean, like, I've been 26 times now since, but still, that first time, it was really good experience. And I remember we sat down, we made out like, let's refine this plan we're doing. Let's outline the path ahead, and let's come up with a name. I think that was right. We needed to come up with a name for the company. And I know we were doing a bunch of domain name kind of brainstorming, name storming online. And the tool we were using is called NameFuse, right? NameFuse, which
was it actually called that, or I remember you came up with
it was called NameFuse, and we had like open source, world sourcing, crowdsource. That was all like there was like those were the source based themes that we were looking at and had all in this tool. And then we were trying to fuse them all together. And then we're like, hey, well, what about just SourceFuse? And so because we're the fusion of the open source and world source and outsource, and we were tinkering around it, but we just went with the name of the tool we were using and with our source, and it seemed to fit. I remember that epiphany where when you find it seems so simple. I was like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I think we fell in love with it quite straight away. And I remember for some of our sort of rudimentary attempts at creating a logo using, I think, word art initially, coming up with funny names. But I think that was part of it, right? Like being able to sort of say that, hey, to both of us that resonated and made sense. And what I find, all these years later, obviously we've evolved and pivoted as a business, but that's still stuck. The open source, helping use open source and helping customers get better value to what they're doing, and really improving how they, not wasting money on closed source, sort of closed ecosystems. So I'm glad that, that was a lot of foresight 18 years ago.
Yeah, and it's still like at the time it was like at the application level of CRMs and some e-commerce tools and everything else, and now a lot of it is at the fundamental like architecture level, including like what we continue to work with today is the underlying open source ecosystem. I think the things we latched onto are still valid. The security and the visibility and transparency of kind of what makes it better, and obviously the lack of paying a lot of licensing fees you don't need to pay. I'll chime in. So yeah, it's true as much as ever now, I think. What are some of your memorable moments along the way, starting early, and maybe we'll kind of evolve to now, I guess? But what do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I was just thinking about back then, and then 2005. Obviously, you'd come, and then I remember your first anniversary visit. Was it like 2007 or when you officially had that was fun, and how we actually helped open a friend's bar, and that became his launch party, where we had to use my home speakers because the bar was not even set up, and basically it was a bit more bootstrapping. That was the cheapest place you could get. So we had to, and it was still nice, and everybody enjoyed it, and we had a really good time. I still very often go, see those pictures and go back to that. It was fun.
Yeah, I love it. I remember we had a cake. It was like first anniversary cake that was there. It was a whole feel. I mean, I remember doing some dancing at that bar and club. That was good times. It was good times.
And amazingly, we other than both of us, I think we still have a few people who were at that party, still part of SourceFuse. Obviously Ruchi and Chanda, and these guys have been sort of instrumental. So it's kind of heartwarming to see that people from then carry on, and sort of we've built up that team family from there. So nice.
Yeah, there's some interesting lessons learned along the way from getting from way back then to now, I think. I remember our early learning when we're in early growth mode and as a bootstrapped company, how customer concentration is kind of an important thing, and being able to see the wrong side of it when a couple of the wedges of the pie of you're rather too big on the revenue side, and market turns and everybody's impacted all at once. That was I remember that was at 2008ish, I guess.
Lesson hard learned, yeah, and. And obviously they were also our sort of first official customer at SourceFuse. We ended up being too sort of dependent on them. And I think it's a lesson, like, unfortunately, a lot of people don't think about. It's not an obvious lesson. Hey, your customers wanting to get bigger. why shouldn't we just let them get bigger instead of
Right.
thinking, not thinking about what dependence you're creating on them? And when I first realized that that's going to happen, and there was a bit of a aha moment, if you will, in a negative sense, that you have to make sure that that dependence is not going to ultimately be harmful. So I think that's become a big priority for us. And sometimes you have to manage growth of a customer to make sure that you're not really getting overexposed to them, which is interesting.
Yeah,
Counterintuitive, but interesting. Yeah.
it is. It's a tricky thing that you don't discover until it's a problem or until you're trying to actually go growth investment and scale, because then you realize like why people who've been around long enough have seen that becoming a challenge. So it becomes important
True.
when it matters. But you're right. Like who wants to limit a growth with a particular customer? It does seem counterintuitive.
What we have learned is that we can say, I think we've learned to be nimble. We've learned to pivot. We've learned how to manage a bootstrapped and grow a bootstrap business, and we've scaled it quite impressively. I think right now we're about 600 odd people, still bootstrapped, still going strong. So that's, I think, kudos to the team. And I think so I'm really, I think, proud of that sort of culture that we built also, that allows us to be resilient, to be adaptive, and to keep moving forward despite, I think we've seen now 2 or 3 sort of events like that in that 18-year period, 2008, and there was COVID, stuff like that, right? Which is really ensure that we've sort of stood that test of time. And and everybody along, what if you had to kind of look back and come up with, what do you think are your top 2 or 3 learn you'd like to give advice to folks starting out now in today's world? What were those lessons that still stick out to you?
Yeah, I think other than the whole concentration issue we already covered, but like I think the lesson is that nimbleness or adaptability, ability to pivot. I think that you just referenced, I think is a big yes. What you would advise a lot of entrepreneurs starting out now. It's the grit to get through it and working through whatever it takes. But like thinking through our pivots, we've followed so many market cycles at this point. Like so initially it's open source implementation for customers and how do you leverage these applications, and then then we moved to, obviously mobile became a big piece of it, mobile applications, and do you guys do mobile apps, and so how does the app fit into a corporate strategy or a technology strategy, or and then moved into the cloud initiative, and the kind of more everything all-encompassing apps to web and app and everything connected, and then device. We've had a little device sprinkled in there. Now it's all cloud connectivity, data, and then moving into some Gen AI. So like we've been able to adapt and work through these different offerings, because that's where the market led us, and we've always, being entrepreneurs ourselves, have tried to stay on the cutting edge. So I think that adaptability is what's helped us, survive, weather the storms, and also stay relevant and current even today through having that experience of all the shifts. So I think that our ability to do that, I think, is why we're still here, and I think is a big part of what people need to do in their own companies. Of don't be open and nimble and be agile for where the market should be taking you, because I think that's important.
And then allowing your team to sort of be part of that decision-making process and building those that competency that really kind of gives you the ability to make those decisions fast. I think for me, I think the biggest thing has been how we've been able to build a really sort of smart, invested, very often better than us team in many ways, which is, I think, key. Where because very often entrepreneurs want to sort of centralize, and no one person possesses all the skills. So I think that's, key is how do you make sure you hire people who are better than you in in aspects that require sort of growth, and then letting them do that. Kind of, what is your lesson learned? What's your it's a half a lifetime. So what's your lesson learned?
The singular lesson. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to. I don't know if there's a singular lesson. It's a constant learning, because it's been a journey and an evolution over this time, and everything that you thought we were planning for changes from external factors, internal factors, people, which is a huge factor, like you said, in getting the right people. And that's sometimes easier said than done. And you have a few misses before you get the right hits and everything. So I think the lesson learned is you're starting something out. It's just, be ready for the long game, because the quick hitting path of you picture this super success path of everything going perfectly right doesn't usually happen that way. So, kind of being being able to look at the long game and kind of have what it takes to get there is kind of that. I guess the naivete of startups early on. So many entrepreneurs they read about the story of the overnight success that was really an 8-year grind that became the overnight success in the news, and they kind of miss that kind of the adaptability work and those lessons that come out of it. So I think we're still learning as we grow now. We're because we've been running it and had some success, we're learning now how do we continue to move to the next phase, because there's always that what got you here won't get you there concept as you're scaling a company. So it's just being ready to continuously learn, I think, is an ongoing lesson in itself.
And I think for me, the biggest learning has been just in that vein, Kelly, to know what is important for you and for us as an entrepreneur, and not really comparing yourself to what other people need and what they're doing, and not have, because that's always dangerous saying, we all have our own journeys and our own paths, and, we have to kind of stay true to that. And businesses very often will reflect the teams and the founders that build it. So is allowing that process to kind of, happen, and not try to compare yourself with other people, and being true to yourself. I think that's been my biggest lesson.
Key milestones that are notable to you, like that show you're progressing, I think, as a company, or that we've had, anything come to mind?
I mean, there's so many. I think we've had, our, when we opened our first, second office in Chandigarh, had a second development center. I think when we hit a milestone, I think the first million was definitely the hardest. I think that was one, definitely goes back. Yeah. And, I think when we kind of have, over the past couple of years, over time, been awarded, top modernization company by the world's largest cloud, hyperscaler. That was a big milestone for me personally. I felt a lot of validation around that. So, lots come to mind over this past sort of 2 decades almost now.
The one that comes to my mind is I think I've thought about before, is when we were able to start saying no to certain opportunities because we know they weren't a fit with where we were going. I think there was kind of a sense of maturity that comes from that, of know what to say no to is as important as know what to say yes to, in terms of taking on work because where it's taking you, or if it's the right fit, and kind of getting a little more kind of focusing on knowing who you are. So I think the ability to know when not to take something on because it's not a fit, it was to me that felt like a key milestone, kind of years and years ago, when we can kind of come to that realization.
Thank you, Kelly, for sort of this I would say life-changing partnership. I think it's been amazing and wonderful. I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah, same here. Absolutely. What are we talking about in our next 10-year reunion? Where when we get back together and reminisce on at least the last 5 or 10 years from now.
Hopefully, how we had a very successful IPO. I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah. Whatever those lessons we learned.
I have learned is exactly, it's not to second guess what's going to happen 5 to 10 years later. So I think that's the most important lesson.
Yeah. No, I'd echo that. It's been great. It's been a great ride so far and still continues to be.